This isn't just a story, it's a chilling whisper from the precipice of betrayal, a stark reminder that the darkest monsters often wear the faces of those we love most. What if everything you've sacrificed, every ounce of unconditional love you've poured into your family, was secretly tallied, not as a blessing, but as a debt to be collected through your demise? What if your very existence became an obstacle, a hurdle to be removed by the very hands you nurtured? Prepare yourself for a journey into the heart of a mother's unthinkable discovery, a story so raw and unfathomable that it will shake your understanding of family to its core. This is the truth of how I, Lydia, found myself caught in a web of greed and deceit, forced to orchestrate my own death to unmask the horrifying plot devised by my closest kin. You might think you know betrayal, but nothing, absolutely nothing, will prepare you for what I uncovered. The unthinkable discovery. My carefully constructed world, the universe I had lovingly built around my only son, imploded with a horrifying silence in the cramped back seat of a silver sedan. It was an ordinary afternoon, the kind that usually hums with the gentle rhythm of a life well lived. I, Lydia, at 62 years old, had simply wanted to sprinkle a little extra joy into Javier's busy day. His favorite chocolate cake, a recipe passed down through generations, cooling on my counter, had seemed like the perfect surprise. My heart, usually a steady drum of contentment, pulsed with a giddy anticipation as I drove to his office, a secret smile playing on my lips like a mischievous schoolgirl. I pictured his face, lighting up with that boyish delight he always showed for my baking. As I pulled into the bustling parking lot, I spotted Javier's distinctive silver Faute sedan nestled in a corner spot. An impish idea sparked within me, a playful whim I hadn't indulged in years. I would slip into the back seat, becoming a silent, cake-bearing ninja, ready to spring my surprise the moment he returned. The car, fortunately, was unlocked, a tiny stroke of luck I then attributed to fate, not a chilling precursor of things to come. I eased myself into the back, crouching low behind the front seats, my heart thrumming with a delightful blend of excitement and tenderness. I imagined his astonished expression, the burst of laughter, the warm hug. The chocolate cake, carefully cradled in my lap, felt like a symbol of all the love I held for him. Minutes stretched into an eternity, each tick of the parking lot's ambient sounds amplifying the suspense. Then footsteps, heavy, purposeful, approaching the car. My breath hitched. The driver's side door opened, and Javier slid into his seat. But then, a second shadow fell across the passenger side. Another door opened, and a woman settled in. My initial thought was fleeting, innocent. A coworker, perhaps, someone he was giving a ride. But then she spoke, and the sound of her voice sent a jolt of recognition through me. Raquel, his wife. A wave of tenderness, born of years of maternal affection, washed over me. How sweet, I mused, that they were leaving work together, perhaps for a date or a quiet evening at home. My smile, however, was brittle, fragile, and utterly unprepared for the conversation that was about to unfold. The first words that spilled from Raquel's lips were not just words. They were shards of ice, slicing through my composure, freezing the warmth in my chest. "Are you absolutely sure no one will suspect anything when it happens?" she asked, her voice a chilling monotone I had never, in all my interactions with her, heard before. A coldness settled in my gut. What it was, I couldn't yet fathom, but an icy tendril of unease began to coil within me. Javier's response, delivered in a tone that stripped the air from my lungs and left me gasping for an unspoken breath, cemented the dread. "Raquel, we've talked about this 1,000 times. The plan is perfect. Mom will have a very natural, very believable accident. No one is going to question it when a woman her age slips on the stairs in her old house." The world tilted. The familiar scent of Javier's car, the texture of the seat beneath my trembling hands, everything became distorted, surreal. My son, my only son. The boy I had cradled and nurtured, the man I had raised alone after his father's untimely death when he was a mere 8 years old, was calmly, methodically planning to kill me. The sheer, unfathomable horror of it seized me, rendering me utterly motionless, my heart a fractured mess of disbelief and agony. And the horror deepened as Raquel continued, a perverse excitement bubbling in her voice. "And after the funeral, when everything calms down, we can sell that old house and move into the subdivision we've always wanted. With the $200,000 that property is worth, plus the savings she has put away, we can live like we've always dreamed. My mind went numb, a protective fog descending over the raw pain. The old house she spoke of, dismissed with such contempt, was more than just bricks and mortar. It was the sanctuary where I had poured every drop of my being, every sacrifice, to ensure Javier had a life better than my own. Each faded wallpaper pattern, every creak in the floorboards, whispered memories of sleepless nights spent tending to his childhood fevers, of birthdays celebrated, with little money but overflowing love, of countless afternoons hunched over the kitchen table, guiding him through his homework. It was the backdrop of a mother's relentless, unyielding devotion. Then, Javier's voice sliced through the haze once more, bringing with it an even deeper wound. "Alvin and Patricia are on board, right?" The names hit me like a physical blow. Alvin, my older brother, my own flesh and blood, and Patricia, his wife. They were also complicit, involved in this diabolical conspiracy against me, their sister-in-law. Raquel confirmed it with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Of course they are. Your uncle is desperate for the money ever since he lost his job, and Patricia won't stop reminding me that your mother has always been very stingy with them. She says it's time for the family to get what they deserve." Stingy. The word echoed in the confined space of my mind, a cruel, mocking reverberation. Stingy? I had worked tirelessly, scrubbing other people's floors and homes since I was 18, all to provide for my son. I had sold my most cherished possession, my wedding jewelry, to pay for his college tuition. I had never bought myself a new dress, never indulged in a single luxury, ensuring he had everything he needed, everything he desired. This was their twisted definition of my sacrifice. The conversation continued, a grotesque blueprint for my staged demise. "The life insurance is going to help too. That's another $100,000 we'll get with no problems," Javier added, his voice devoid of any human empathy. In that moment, the sweet boy I had raised, the one who loved chocolate cake and dreamed of being a lawyer, ceased to exist. He was a stranger, a callous architect of my end. Tears, silent and scorching, began to trace paths down my cheeks. I remained huddled, invisible, praying with every fiber of my being that they wouldn't discover me. My body trembled uncontrollably, not just from the suffocating fear, but from a profound, soul-shattering sadness that threatened to cleave me in two. The details unfolded with clinical precision. The exact moment, how to simulate a fall, even the performative grief they would display at my funeral. When they finally exited the car, walking away as if nothing had transpired, I waited. 10 agonizing minutes before I dared to move, before I could trust my shaking limbs to carry me. I emerged from that car a fundamentally changed woman. The loving, trusting mother had died in that back seat, replaced by a ghost of myself, navigating a landscape of unimaginable betrayal. My old car, a familiar comfort, felt alien as I drove home, tears blurring the winding roads. My heart fragmented into a million irreparable pieces. My own son, the very reason for my breath, wanted me dead. A life of sacrifice, a seed of resentment. To truly grasp the abyss of this betrayal, one must journey back to its genesis. My story with Javier, the foundation of this bitter fruit, began 35 years ago in the stark grip of absolute poverty. His father, Robert, a kind but struggling construction worker, was cruelly taken from us when Javier was just 8 years old. He left behind no insurance, no savings, only a small, very old house. A meager shelter we had purchased with unimaginable sacrifice, brick by painful brick. Overnight, I, a single mother with only a high school education, found myself facing the daunting task of raising a child alone, battling a world that seemed determined to swallow us whole. At 20, I plunged into the demanding world of house cleaning. A relentless grind that began each day at 5 a.m. I would prepare Javier's breakfast, walk him to school, and then crisscross the city, cleaning offices, homes, apartments, whatever work I could find to put food on our table. My hands, once soft, grew rough and calloused from the harsh cleaning chemicals. My back, once straight, began to stoop under the relentless strain of heavy buckets, but I never, not once, uttered a complaint. Javier was my anchor, my beacon. He was a brilliant child, always at the top of his class, his teachers constantly marveling at his potential, urging me to ensure he attended college. Those words became my singular mission, the driving force behind every aching muscle, every weary bone. Every dollar I earned, no matter how small, was meticulously saved, a sacred offering for his education. When Javier turned 15, a computer became a necessity for his school projects. While other mothers effortlessly purchased these modern marvels for their children, for me, it represented 3 months of grueling, relentless labor. In a moment of desperate resolve, I sold my wedding ring, the sole tangible memento of my beloved Robert, a gleaming circle of promise and memory, to buy him that computer. Javier never knew the depth of that sacrifice, and I never told him, shielding him from the burden of guilt, wanting only for him to soar unencumbered. During his senior year of high school, a deluge of brochures from prestigious private universities, all touting their impressive law programs, began to arrive. Javier, with his keen intellect and unwavering sense of justice, had decided he wanted to be a lawyer. And I, his mother, was prepared to move heaven and earth to make that dream a reality. The tuition, a staggering $20,000 a year, was a fortune, a comprehensible sum for a woman like me. In desperation, I turned to my brother Alvin, hoping for a lifeline. Alvin, older and seemingly successful, held a good job at an insurance company and lived comfortably with his wife Patricia. I laid out my heart, explaining Javier's brilliance, his dreams, my own desperate need. I begged him to lend me even a fraction of the money, promising with every fiber of my being to repay it with interest. His response was a cruel, blunt instrument. "Lydia, I can't risk my savings on your son's impossible dreams. He should get a job and forget about those fantasies of becoming a professional." His words stung, a festering wound in my already weary spirit, but they did not break my resolve. Undeterred, I embraced a second job, cleaning a veterinary clinic at night. My days now stretched from 5 a.m. until 11 p.m., 7 days a week. My body screamed in protest, but my determination, fueled by a mother's boundless love, remained unbreakable. On weekends, I transformed into a culinary entrepreneur, selling homemade tamales, empanadas, and cakes. Anything that could generate an extra penny. Javier, bless his heart, sometimes offered to help, but I always insisted he focus on his studies. "Your job is to study, son. Leave the rest to me," I would tell him, watching him with an aching heart, knowing the weight of my sacrifice. Finally, miraculously, I accumulated enough for his first year of college. The day I walked with him to enroll, seeing his name officially stamped on those university documents, was a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. Tears of happiness, of triumph, streamed down my face. My son was going to be a lawyer. Every single sacrifice, every ache, every drop of sweat had been worth it. The college years that followed were the most arduous of my entire life. I worked up to 14 hours a day, relentlessly, to ensure the tuition payments were always current. There were months when my own plate was bare, when I barely had enough money to feed myself. Yet Javier never wanted for anything. Books, supplies, money for social outings. I shielded him from our poverty, unwilling for him to feel any less worthy than his privileged classmates. During his junior year, Javier met Raquel, a classmate from a wealthy, influential family. Her father owned a sprawling empire of businesses, and she, accustomed to a life of unimaginable luxury, moved through the world with an air of effortless entitlement. Initially, I worried that Javier, keenly aware of his humble origins, would feel inferior, eclipsed by her world. But he appeared genuinely smitten, deeply in love, and wonderfully happy. Raquel, for her part, always maintained a cordial facade with me, yet from our very first meeting, an indefinable coldness, a subtle distance, emanated from her. When she visited our small home, her eyes, though never overtly critical, would sweep over our old furniture, the walls that desperately needed a fresh coat of paint, the cramped kitchen where I lovingly prepared our simple meals. She never voiced a complaint, but her gestures, her almost imperceptible expressions, spoke volumes, confirming my unspoken fear that our world was simply not good enough for her. After graduation, Javier quickly secured a position at a prestigious law firm. His first paycheck alone dwarfed my earnings of 3 months, a testament to his intellect and my years of sacrifice. I felt an immense surge of pride, but also a profound sense of relief, daring to believe that I could finally, after so many relentless years, allow myself a modicum of rest. He married Raquel in an opulent ceremony that cost me my last precious savings. Raquel had insisted on a wedding befitting their newfound social standing, and though the expense left me utterly depleted, I wanted nothing more than for my son to be happy. During the lavish reception, I overheard hushed comments from some guests, their voices laced with disdain about the groom's humble mother. I tried to ignore them, clinging to the fleeting joy of the day. After the wedding, Javier's visits became less frequent, gradually dwindling into sporadic appearances. Raquel always had a litany of excuses: social commitments, urgent work trips, family gatherings with her affluent parents. When they did honor me with their presence, the conversation invariably revolved around their dazzling new life. The luxurious apartment they had rented, the expensive, trendy restaurants where they dined nightly, their grand plans to move into an even larger, more exclusive home. I continued to work, but only part-time now. At 60 years old, my body, worn by decades of relentless labor, simply could not endure the grueling hours of before. I had managed, through sheer discipline, to accumulate about $50,000 in savings over the years. Money I guarded religiously for emergencies, or always to help Javier if he ever found himself in need. My relationship with my brother, Alvin, also soured over time. After Javier's graduation and his successful career launch, Alvin began making increasingly sarcastic comments about my luck with my successful child, his words tinged with a bitter jealousy. Patricia, his wife, was even worse, constantly implying that I had been selfish, investing so much in Javier's education while neglecting the needs of the extended family. But what truly broke my heart was the subtle, insidious transformation I witnessed in Javier. His core values, his manner of speaking, even the way he dressed, everything began to shift, reflecting a new, more superficial identity. Sometimes when he spoke to me, I detected a condescending tone, a hint of disdain that pierced me deeply. It was as if he were slowly, painfully becoming ashamed of his humble origins, of me. 6 months prior to that fateful day in the car, Javier and Raquel began to speak animatedly about purchasing a house in an exclusive, affluent area of the city. The properties there commanded prices exceeding $500,000, an amount that was, to my modest mind, utterly incomprehensible. When I dared to inquire how they planned to finance such an extravagant purchase, Javier offered vague, evasive answers about investments and business opportunities. I also noticed, with a growing sense of unease, that conversations about money became increasingly frequent during their visits. Subtle, almost imperceptible questions about the value of my house, about the extent of my savings, about whether I had updated my life insurance policy. At the time, I foolishly dismissed them as filial concern, believing he simply wanted to ensure I was financially secure. Now, sitting in the desolate quiet of my kitchen, the echoes of that horrific conversation still ringing in my ears, every fragmented piece of the puzzle began to click into place, forming a picture of chilling clarity. His altered personality, the relentless questions about money, Raquel's insidious influence, the shocking complicity of Alvin and Patricia, it had all been part of a macabre, meticulously orchestrated plan, brewing silently beneath the surface for months. My son, for whom I had willingly sacrificed my entire existence, wanted me dead. He wanted my assets, my life insurance, my very breath to fuel his opulent dreams. The irony, a bitter, corrosive truth, was almost unbearable. The very money they sought to murder me for had been earned with the sole, unwavering purpose of giving him the best life possible. The serpent in the family tree. That night, sleep was an elusive stranger. I lay awake in my bed, staring into the oppressive darkness of the ceiling, my mind a chaotic maelstrom, relentlessly replaying every chilling word of that diabolical conversation. Raquel's cold, calculating voice, discussing my death as if it were a mere business transaction, intertwined with Javier's, my own son's voice, calmly agreeing to the specifics of my murder. The horror was a suffocating blanket, pressing down on my chest, refusing to release its grip. At dawn, as the first pale light of day tentatively pierced the darkness, I rose, infused with a cold, steely determination I hadn't known I possessed. If they wanted to play dirty, I realized, then I too could descend into the muck. But first, I needed to truly comprehend the monster I had become in their eyes. I decided to do something utterly unthinkable, something that went against every fiber of my trusting nature. I would spy on my own family. Over the next few days, I became a phantom observer, meticulously studying Javier and Raquel's behavioral patterns. I discreetly parked near their apartment each morning, shadowed them from a distance when they ventured out, and when they deigned to visit me, I hung on to every syllable of their conversations, searching for further cracks in their perfidious facade. What I uncovered through this clandestine observation horrified me even more deeply. Their lifestyle, I soon realized, was a precarious house of cards, utterly unsustainable on Javier's lawyer's salary of approximately $6,000 a month. Raquel, having stopped working after the wedding, indulged in an extravagance that bordered on the absurd. Dinners at upscale restaurants routinely exceeded $200. Designer handbags costing thousands appeared with alarming frequency. Their rented apartment, a testament to their desire for opulence, commanded a staggering $3,000 in monthly rent. Through overheard phone calls and discarded bank statements, I discovered the crushing weight of their accumulated debt. Javier, during one particularly heated phone conversation with a bank representative, argued vehemently about delinquent credit card payments. They owed over $50,000 in loans and credit cards, with interest rates spiraling out of control. The financial pressure, I now understood, had driven them to the brink of desperation, and I, Lydia Monroe, represented their only viable escape. My house, appraised at $200,000, my life insurance policy of $100,000, and my meticulously saved $50,000, the sum total of my life's work, amounted to precisely what they needed to salvage their ruinous financial situation and purchase their coveted dream home. But the most devastating revelation, the one that severed the last vestiges of my emotional tether, was discovering that my brother, Alvin, was not merely involved, but had been the malicious architect of this entire scheme. One afternoon, while covertly cleaning the office where Patricia worked, I overheard a phone conversation that stopped my heart. "Lydia has always been so selfish with her money," Patricia hissed into the phone, her voice laced with venom. "Alvin is right. It's time for the family to get what they deserve. That stingy old woman is going to die sooner or later. Why wait? We need that money too. Alvin lost his job 3 months ago, and we haven't been able to pay the mortgage." I stood frozen behind her office door, the words echoing in the sterile silence. My brother, my own brother, had lost his job and had kept it a secret from me. Instead of seeking help from his family, from me, he had instead chosen a path of murder, convinced that my death was his financial salvation. That very night, consumed by a fierce, righteous anger, I decided to confront Alvin directly. I drove to his house, unannounced, a breach of etiquette I rarely committed, and knocked on his door, my heart hammering against my ribs. When he opened it, his face registered a fleeting moment of surprise, quickly followed by a telltale flicker of guilt. "Lydia, what are you doing here so late?" he asked, his voice strained, conspicuously not inviting me in. "Alvin, I need to talk to you. Can I come in?" I replied, forcing my voice into a semblance of calm. We moved into the living room, where Patricia sat, engrossed in television. She greeted me with her usual icy politeness, a practiced coldness that had become her default in recent years. I settled onto the sofa, my resolve hardening, and decided to cut directly to the core of the matter. "Alvin, is it true that you lost your job?" I asked, my gaze fixed on his face, studying every subtle shift in his expression. His face flushed crimson, and Patricia, with an almost exaggerated gesture, immediately switched off the television. "How did you find out?" he demanded defensively, his voice tight with suspicion. "It doesn't matter how I found out," I countered, my voice steady despite the tremor in my soul. "What matters is that you're my brother, and you didn't tell me anything. Why didn't you ask me for help?" Alvin and Patricia exchanged a swift, furtive glance, a silent communication that confirmed my darkest suspicions. It was a practiced exchange, as if they had rehearsed this very confrontation. "Lydia, you've always had your own problems. We didn't want to bother you," Patricia offered, her voice saccharine, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Patricia, I'm his sister. If Alvin needed help, I would be willing to help him. I have some savings." In that moment, I saw something truly monstrous flicker in my brother's eyes. It wasn't gratitude nor relief. but a festering resentment, deep and venomous. "Some savings," he scoffed, a sneer twisting his lips. "Lydia, we all know you have a lot more than just some savings. You've been hoarding money for years while the rest of the family struggled." His words were like a volley of slaps, each one stinging with calculated cruelty. "Alvin, I earned that money by working 14 hours a day to give my son an education. I didn't hoard it. I sacrificed everything for him." "Exactly," Patricia interrupted, her voice dripping with venom. "Everything for Javier. You never thought about helping your own brother. When he needed money for college, you told him no. But for your little prince, Javier, there was always money." The atmosphere in the room grew heavy, thick with hostility. Years of accumulated resentment, unspoken grievances, now bubbled to the surface, distorting their faces, twisting their words. "You don't understand," I pleaded, trying to reason with them. "I wanted Javier to have opportunities we never had. I wanted to break the cycle of poverty in our family." "And what about breaking the cycle of favoritism?" Alvin roared, rising to his feet, his face contorted with rage. "What about thinking of your brother, who also needs help? It's always been the same, Lydia. Since we were kids, you were Mom and Dad's favorite, and now you act as if you're better than us." These accusations, utterly baseless, spun a narrative designed to justify their avarice, to cloak their malice in a veil of manufactured victimhood. In their twisted version of reality, I was the selfish, privileged sister, while they were the perpetually misunderstood victims. "If you needed money so badly, why didn't you ask me directly?" I insisted, though the answer, chillingly, was already clear to me. Patricia let out a bitter laugh. "So you could give us handouts like we were beggars? So you could make us feel inferior like you always have?" "I have never tried to make you feel inferior." "Oh no?" Alvin yelled, his voice rising. "And what about when you bought a house and we were still renting? And when Javier graduated from college and our kids barely finished high school? And when you brag about your savings while we struggled to make ends meet?" Each accusation, more unjust than the last, was a dagger. I had toiled like a slave for every single thing I possessed. I had inherited nothing, received no windfall of luck. Every dollar was earned through blood, sweat, and tears. Yet, to them, my modest success was a personal affront, an unbearable taunt. "Alvin, if you need money, I can lend you $10,000 right now," I offered desperately, a last-ditch effort to find a peaceful resolution. $10,000? Patricia scoffed, her eyes alight with disdain. "Lydia, we know perfectly well how much money you have. The house is worth $200,000. You have $50,000 in savings, and your life insurance is for $100,000, and you offer us $10,000 like we're beggars." My blood ran cold, turning to ice in my veins. They knew too much, too many precise figures. Someone had meticulously investigated my financial life, laying bare my deepest secrets. "How do you know so much about my money?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, trembling with a primal fear. Alvin and Patricia fell silent, but their faces, starkly revealed, betrayed them. They had said too much. I rose from the sofa on unsteady legs. "I think I have my answer," I said, my voice hollow, and walked towards the door. "Lydia, wait," Alvin yelled behind me, but I was already leaving the house, fleeing the suffocating atmosphere of their greed. That night, my last lingering shred of doubt evaporated. My own family, my biological kin, saw me not as a mother, a sister, an individual, but as a mere obstacle between them and the money they believed they were owed. It wasn't just Javier and Raquel. It was a full-blown family conspiracy, a silent, festering malignancy that had been growing, unseen, for months. The dinner of the damned. The days that followed my chilling discovery were steeped in a darkness I had never known. I found myself trapped in an unimaginable predicament, burdened with the horrifying knowledge that my own family plotted my murder, yet utterly alone, with no one to turn to. Who could I tell? Who would believe that my son, my cherished son, intended to kill me? Moreover, I possessed no concrete proof, only a whispered conversation overheard in a car, a fragile thread of damning evidence. I knew I needed more. If I were to fight them, I had to be meticulously prepared, armed with irrefutable evidence. I began to document everything, their subtle shifts in behavior, the veiled insinuations in their conversations, the increasingly pointed questions during their visits. Anything that could serve as undeniable proof. But I also made a terrifying decision, one that felt like a descent into the very heart of their deception. I would allow them to believe their plan was succeeding. If I displayed any suspicion, if I confronted Javier directly, they would simply alter their strategy, becoming even more dangerous, even more elusive. Instead, I resolved to continue playing the role of the naive, trusting mother, a lamb being led to slaughter, but one with a secret weapon. 3 days after my fraught confrontation with Alvin, Javier called me. His voice, syrupy sweet on the phone, sent shivers down my spine, knowing the true venom that lurked beneath. "Mom, Raquel and I want to take you to that Italian restaurant you like so much," he cooed, his tone oozing with a forced affection. "We haven't spent time together as a family in a while." The restaurant he mentioned was one we had visited only once, more than a year ago, and I hadn't particularly enjoyed it. Yet I feigned excitement, playing my part. "How sweet, son. I love the idea." "Perfect. We'll pick you up Friday at 7. And Mom, wear your favorite green dress. We want you to look nice." The specific instruction about my dress struck me as peculiar, a discordant note in an already unsettling symphony. It was a dress I had bought 2 years prior, one of the few truly expensive garments I had ever allowed myself. I accepted without question, the unsettling request echoing in my mind long after I hung up. Friday afternoon, a heavy cloud of dread hung over me as I meticulously prepared. I slipped into the green dress, precisely as he had instructed, carefully styled my hair, and applied a touch of makeup. As I gazed at my reflection, a voice in my head, cold and clear, whispered that this could very well be my last dinner. Javier and Raquel arrived punctually at 7. Javier, despite his efforts to project an air of relaxed normalcy, seemed noticeably nervous, his forced smiles and superficial comments about the weather failing to mask his underlying tension. Raquel, in stark contrast, appeared utterly serene, almost cheerful, a disquieting calm that I found even more disturbing. The drive to the restaurant was shrouded in an unnatural formality. They spoke of Javier's work, of vague vacation plans, anything to avoid genuine conversation about us, about family. I responded automatically, my mind a laser focus, observing every minute detail of their behavior, searching for clues, for tells. At the restaurant, Raquel, with a flourish of false generosity, insisted I order the most expensive dish on the menu. "Lydia, we're paying for everything tonight. Order whatever you want without worrying about the price," she declared, her smile, again, failing to reach her cold eyes. During dinner, the seemingly casual questions began, insidious probes into my health. "How have you been feeling lately? Had I experienced any dizziness? Any problems climbing stairs? Had I updated my health insurance recently?" "Mom, we're worried about you living alone in that big house," Javier said, adopting a tone of manufactured concern. "The stairs are steep. What if you were to fall?" "Oh, son, don't worry. I've lived in that house for 30 years. I know every step perfectly," I replied, forcing a nonchalant air, my heart hammering. "But Mom," Raquel interjected, her voice laced with a predatory sweetness, "accidents don't care how long we've lived in a place. Maybe you should consider moving to a single-story apartment, something safer for a woman your age." The way she uttered the word accident sent a shiver down my spine. It was as if she were tasting the word, relishing its sound. "And Mom," Javier continued, pressing the point, "have you thought about making a will? I know it's uncomfortable to talk about these things, but it's important to have everything in order." There it was, the true reason for this grotesque charade. They wanted to ensure my will was precisely to their liking, perfectly updated, before they carried out my murder. "Well, I do have a basic will that I made a few years ago," I partially lied, playing along. "I'm leaving everything to you, of course." I watched Javier and Raquel exchange a swift, almost imperceptible glance of satisfaction, a fleeting moment of triumph that lasted barely a second, yet confirmed every one of my darkest suspicions. "That's good, Mom, but maybe you should review it with a lawyer. The laws change, and we want to make sure your wishes are carried out exactly as you want," Javier said, slipping into a detached, professional tone. "In fact," Raquel added, a gleam in her eye, "Javier could help you with that. Since he's a lawyer, he could make sure everything is perfect." The irony was macabre, a grotesque dance of death. My son, the very architect of my impending murder, wanted to be the one to draft the legal document that would bequeath him my worldly possessions after my death. After dinner, they insisted on driving me home. The conversation during the ride became even more sinister, spiraling into morbid hypotheticals. "Mom, if something were to happen to you," Javier said, his voice feigning worry, "is there anything specific you would want us to do with your personal belongings?" "Why are you talking about such sad things?" I asked, feigning annoyance, a tight knot of dread in my stomach. "I plan to live for many more years." "Of course, Mom," Raquel quickly interjected, her voice smooth and unsettling. "We just want to be prepared, just in case. It's the responsible thing to do." When we arrived at my house, a strange, unsettling deviation from their usual routine occurred. Instead of bidding me farewell at the door, as they always had, they insisted on walking me inside. "Let us help you with the stairs, Mom. It's dark and you could trip," Javier said, taking my arm, his touch feeling like a serpent's coil. As we ascended the familiar steps to my front door, I felt their eyes, cold and calculating, evaluating each step, each handrail, every conceivable point where an accident could occur. It was as if they were performing a reconnaissance, a meticulous survey of their intended crime scene. Once inside, Raquel began to wander through my home, her movements akin to an inspector. "Lydia, you really should get better lighting on these stairs. They're very dangerous in the dark." "And Mom," Javier added, his gaze fixed on a worn spot, "this rug at the top of the stairs is a little loose. You could easily trip on it." Each seemingly innocuous comment was another, deeper stab into my heart, revealing the chilling precision of their plot. They weren't just planning my death, they were here in my sanctuary, calculating the exact mechanics of its execution. After they finally departed, leaving behind a silence heavier than any I had ever known, I remained awake all night, trembling uncontrollably. Not just with fear, but with a profound, aching sadness that manifested as physical pain. My son had dined with me, feigned concern for my well-being, walked through my home, all while meticulously plotting my demise. That night, amidst the silent screams of my broken heart, I made the most difficult decision of my life. I could not simply wait for them to execute their monstrous plan. I could not continue to exist under the crushing weight of knowing that each day could be my last. I had to act, but not in a way they would ever anticipate. If they wanted me to have an accident, then an accident was precisely what they would get. But it would be an accident entirely of my own design, orchestrated with a precision that would expose their depravity for the entire world to see. I began to plan my own fake death. The grand deception, faking my own death. The very act of planning my own death was without a doubt the most surreal and terrifying undertaking of my entire life. For days, sleep became a distant memory as I meticulously dissected every detail, every potential flaw, every conceivable way my audacious plan could unravel. Yet, amidst the terror, a fierce conviction burned within me. This was the only path to expose my morally bankrupt family, and more importantly, to save my own life. My first and most crucial need was an accomplice, someone whose loyalty was absolute, whose discretion was unwavering. There was only one soul in this world I trusted implicitly, my neighbor, Beatrice. She was 70 years old, a retired nurse with decades of experience, and a steadfast friend for over 20 years. If anyone possessed the courage and capability to assist me in this impossible endeavor, it was her. One crisp morning, after confirming with obsessive care that no one was observing me, I walked to her house, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The moment she opened the door, her keen, experienced eyes immediately registered my agitated state. "Lydia, what's wrong? You look terrible," she exclaimed, her voice laced with genuine concern, pulling me into her warm, familiar kitchen, the same kitchen where we had shared countless cups of coffee over the years. But this conversation, I knew, would be unlike any other. "Beatrice, what I'm about to tell you is going to sound completely insane, but I need you to listen to every word, very carefully," I began, my voice trembling with the enormity of my confession. I poured out my heart, recounting everything. The horrifying conversation in Javier's car, the sinister dinner, the painful confrontation with my brother, and the chilling reconnaissance visits to my home. Beatrice listened in stunned silence, her expression morphing from initial surprise to abject horror, and finally to a quiet, burning indignation. "My God, Lydia, this is monstrous," she whispered, finally reaching across the table to grasp my trembling hands in hers, her touch a grounding presence. "Beatrice, I need your help. I have a plan, but I cannot do it alone." I laid out my audacious scheme. I would fake my own death, an illusion so convincing that even seasoned paramedics would declare me deceased. Beatrice, with her profound medical knowledge, could assist me in simulating the vital signs of a lifeless body for just long enough to be officially pronounced dead and initiate the necessary procedures. "Lydia, do you realize how dangerous this is?" she questioned, her brow furrowed with concern. "If something goes wrong, I'm going to die for real," I finished her sentence, my voice firm despite the tremor. "They already have everything planned. It's only a matter of time." Beatrice closed her eyes, her mind clearly racing, weighing the impossible odds. "We would need specific medications," she mused, thinking aloud. "We would have to calculate the exact doses, and the timing would have to be absolutely perfect." "So, will you help me?" I asked, my gaze locked on hers, pleading. She looked at me intently for several seconds that stretched into an eternity, a silent battle raging within her. "Yes," she finally declared, her voice resolute. "But we're going to do it in the safest way possible." Over the next few grueling days, Beatrice and I became a meticulous two-woman team, orchestrating every intricate detail of the plan. Leveraging her extensive network from decades of nursing, she discreetly obtained the specialized medications we required. We also identified the precise emergency medical technician who would likely respond to the call, a young man named Ruben, freshly graduated, whose inexperience we hoped would prevent him from detecting a sophisticated medical simulation. The plan was complex, multi-layered, yet painstakingly feasible. I would ingest a precise combination of medications designed to depress my vital signs to almost imperceptible levels. Beatrice would then discover my body and immediately call emergency services. When the paramedics arrived, her medical expertise would subtly guide their assessment, ensuring they reached the conclusion of my death without probing too deeply. Once officially declared deceased, my body would be transported to the hospital morgue where, critically, a friend of Beatrice's, a pathologist named Dr. Jones, not my brother, a crucial detail to prevent his interference, had agreed to assist us without asking questions. He would falsify the death certificate and allow me to resurrect in private once the effects of the medication had worn off. Meanwhile, I would remain hidden, a spectral observer in a secret room in Beatrice's basement, meticulously watching and recording every reaction, every callous action my family undertook after my supposed death. The most challenging aspect of our plan, Beatrice realized, was the legal and logistical framework. We absolutely had to avoid an autopsy. This meant my death needed to appear entirely natural and expected for a woman of my age. Beatrice brilliantly suggested faking a heart attack, a common, rarely questioned cause of death in older individuals with no prior history of serious cardiac issues. 2 weeks after our initial planning session, we deemed ourselves ready. We selected a Sunday afternoon, knowing Javier and Raquel would be at her parents' house for their weekly family lunch, ensuring their absence during the critical initial phase. Sunday morning, I awoke with a strange, almost eerie calm. After weeks of suffocating terror, I was finally, irrevocably, taking control of my narrative. I dressed with deliberate care, choosing my favorite yellow dress, a dress that symbolized the joy I once found in life. I styled my hair, applied a touch of makeup, an act of defiance, of dignity. If I was going to die, I would do so looking presentable. Beatrice arrived at 2 p.m., a small, discreet medical bag clutched in her hand. "Are you absolutely sure about this, Lydia?" she asked one last time, her voice tinged with lingering apprehension. "Completely sure," I replied, my voice unwavering. Under her careful supervision, I took the medications. The taste was bitter, unpleasant, but I forced myself not to dwell on it. "How long until it takes effect?" I asked, a tremor in my voice. "Between 15 and 20 minutes. You'll feel drowsy first. Then your breathing will become shallow and your pulse will decrease dramatically. It will be like entering a very light coma." The next few minutes stretched into an eternity, each second an agonizing test of nerve. Beatrice, a picture of focused professionalism, monitored my vital signs with relentless precision, meticulously noting every subtle change in her small notebook. Gradually, an ethereal lightness enveloped me, a peculiar sensation of floating, of being disconnected from my own body. "Lydia, can you hear me?" Beatrice whispered, her voice a distant echo. I strained to reply, but my vocal cords refused to obey. I could hear her perfectly, yet I was utterly paralyzed, a disembodied consciousness. It was terrifying, yet morbidly fascinating, to experience the threshold of oblivion. "Perfect. Your vital signs are exactly where we need them to be. Now I'm going to call 911. I heard the distinct ring of the phone, and then Beatrice's voice, broken and genuinely distressed, launching into the most critical performance of her life. "Please hurry. I found my neighbor unconscious in her house. I think she's dead. She's not breathing. She doesn't have a pulse. Hurry." While we waited for the paramedics, Beatrice, with practiced ease, gently positioned me on the living room floor, arranging my body into a natural posture, as if I had simply collapsed from a sudden, fatal heart attack. "Everything is going to be all right, Lydia," she whispered in my ear, her voice a comforting balm. "In a few hours, this will be over, and we'll have all the evidence we need." The distant wail of sirens grew steadily louder, a chilling symphony signaling the moment of truth. My heart, had I possessed control over it, would have been pounding violently. This was it. If Beatrice's acting faltered, if the paramedics were more experienced than we anticipated, if some minute detail had been overlooked, the entire elaborate plan would shatter into a million pieces. The paramedics burst into my house, their medical equipment clanging softly. From my semi-conscious state, I heard fragmented snippets of their assessment. 62-year-old female, unresponsive, don't detect a pulse. Respiration is imperceptible. How long has she been like this? "I found her a few minutes ago," Beatrice replied, her voice convincingly broken, genuinely distraught. "I came to visit, and the door was open. I found her like this on the floor." After several agonizing minutes of their thorough examination, I heard the words I had been simultaneously awaiting and dreading. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your friend has passed away. It was likely a heart attack. At this age, it happens very quickly." Officially, Lydia Monroe was dead. Now the most difficult and harrowing part of the plan began. Observing my family's reaction to the news of my demise. Hush. The vultures descend. I awoke in the hushed stillness of Beatrice's basement, disoriented, my mouth parched as a desert, the last vestiges of the powerful medication slowly receding. My body felt leaden, alien, a strange vessel returning from the edge of existence. Beatrice sat beside me, her gaze gentle yet vigilant, monitoring my recovery with the same unwavering professionalism she had displayed throughout my staged death. "How do you feel?" she asked softly, helping me slowly sit upright. "Like I was actually dead," I replied, my voice hoarse, gritty. It worked. They officially declared me dead, perfectly. The death certificate is already signed. Officially, Lydia Monroe died yesterday at 3:45 in the afternoon from a sudden heart attack. The stark reality of our elaborate deception hit me with full force. I no longer legally existed. I was a ghost, liberated to observe my family's reactions, a silent witness to their true colors. "Did you call Javier?" I asked, the question itself a physical ache in my chest. "Yes, I called him last night after they took you to the hospital." His reaction was disturbing. Beatrice held out her phone, where she had recorded the conversation. With trembling hands, I pressed play, listening to the chilling playback. "Javier, it's Beatrice, your mom's neighbor. I have some very sad news. Your mother passed away this afternoon." A heavy silence stretched for several agonizing seconds. When Javier finally spoke, his voice held no trace of surprise or devastation. Instead, a palpable sense of relief permeated his tone. "Oh my God, what happened?" he asked, but the shock in his voice was forced, a poorly acted performance. "It was a heart attack. I found her in her house. The paramedics said it was very quick, that she didn't suffer." "I see. Thank you for calling me, Beatrice. Raquel and I will go to the hospital immediately to take care of everything." "Javier, I'm so sorry. I know how much you loved your mother. Yes, it's a terrible loss, but my mom had been having some health problems lately. I guess it was her time." That casual lie, spun so effortlessly about my supposed health problems, pierced me like a dagger. He was already fabricating a narrative, a convenient justification for my death, preempting any uncomfortable questions. After listening to the recording, the tears I had fought so hard to suppress finally fell. Not tears of fear, but of profound grief for the son I had lost, for the coldness in his voice, the chilling ease with which he had accepted my demise, the blatant lie about my health. It all confirmed with sickening certainty that they had indeed been planning my death. "There's more," Beatrice said softly, her gaze compassionate. "I installed hidden cameras in your house before you died. I wanted to capture their reaction when they went to pick up your things." She gestured to her laptop, displaying a real-time feed from my own living room, now empty and eerily silent. It was a bizarre, disquieting experience. Seeing my home from this disembodied perspective, knowing it was no longer technically my home. "When do you think they'll come?" I whispered, my voice still hoarse. "Probably today. People don't usually wait long to go through the belongings of the deceased, especially when money is involved." We didn't have to wait long. Around noon, the distinct sound of keys rattling in the lock of my house echoed through the quiet basement. Javier, Raquel, Alvin, and Patricia entered, a coordinated team of vultures descending upon their prey. What unfolded on the screen tore my soul to shreds. There were no tears, no overt mourning, not even a momentary, respectful pause upon entering the house where I had lived for 30 years, the very crucible of my sacrifices. They immediately began to appraise my belongings, their eyes sharp and calculating, like auctioneers at a morbid estate sale. "Well, finally," Patricia declared, her voice laced with undisguised relief. "I didn't think this day would ever come." "Patricia, please," Javier interjected, but his tone was more a caution for discretion than genuine reproach. "We just lost my mom." "Oh, Javier, don't give me the sentimental stuff now," Raquel snapped, her voice chillingly devoid of emotion. "We all know this was necessary. Your mother lived her life. Now we can live ours." Alvin was already rifling through the kitchen cabinets, searching for important documents. "Where do you think she kept the bank papers? We need to find the information for her savings accounts." "Check the desk in her bedroom," Javier suggested, his voice betraying a detailed knowledge of my private affairs. She was always very organized with those papers. I watched them disperse through my house like a swarm of locusts, touching my cherished possessions, evaluating their monetary worth, openly planning the division of my inheritance. It was like witnessing my entire life being systematically dismantled and desecrated by the very people who were supposed to love me. Raquel discovered my jewelry box, a small, worn casket of memories, and began to examine each piece with a critical eye. "This gold chain might be worth something, and these earrings, even though they're old, might have some sentimental value for someone." "Sentimental value isn't going to pay the mortgage," Patricia scoffed, her voice laced with sarcasm. "You'd better focus on what's actually worth money." Javier, with chilling efficiency, located my financial documents in the desk drawer, precisely where I had always kept them. "Here they are. Savings account at Northwood Bank, $3,000. Checking account, $8,000. And here's the life insurance policy." "How much is the insurance?" Alvin asked eagerly, his eyes glittering with avarice. $100,000, sole beneficiary, me." "Perfect," Raquel exclaimed with unbridled satisfaction. "With that, plus the savings, plus what we get from selling the house, we'll have enough to buy the new house and pay off all our debts." "And we'll get our share, right?" Patricia demanded, her tone verging on a threat. "Of course," Javier replied quickly, smoothly. "As we agreed, a quarter for you." Listening to my family negotiate the division of my inheritance, their voices cold and calculating while my body was still fresh in the morgue, was a torment more profound than I could have ever imagined. But the worst, the deepest cut, was yet to come. Alvin found a small family photo on my nightstand, one of the rare pictures where all of us, a semblance of a happy family, appeared together on a Christmas 5 years ago. Instead of showing even a flicker of emotion, he casually tossed it into the trash. "We don't need to keep these sentimental things," he declared with utter disdain. "Alvin's right," Raquel confirmed, her voice pragmatic, ruthless. "We need to be practical. We're going to sell the house quickly so we can't clutter ourselves with useless things." But it was Patricia who delivered the words that sliced through me, leaving an indelible wound. Honestly, I'm surprised it took her so long to die. With how stubborn she was, I thought she'd live to be 90 just despite us. They all laughed. They laughed at me, at my supposed stubbornness for clinging to life, at my death. In that precise moment, any lingering doubt I might have harbored about the righteousness of my plan, about the justice I sought, completely vanished. Javier pulled out his phone and, without a moment's hesitation, began making calls. Morrison Real Estate Agency, this is Javier Ruiz. I need you to come appraise a house for a quick sale. Yes, it's urgent. The owner passed away yesterday. We want it on the market this week. They hadn't even bothered to plan a dignified funeral. When Raquel, almost as an afterthought, inquired about the funeral arrangements, Javier replied, "Simple cremation, no wake, no ceremony. It's cheaper and faster." And if people ask why there was no wake,